Oh, shoot. Well, good afternoon, folks. This is Pops out in the barn. Oh, maybe I'll do it this way. It'll look easier. Some people on another page on Facebook had asked, I gotta move my seat closer, about the types of taps and such for cleaning up in the carburetors. Mostly in the Zenith or Marvel Shoveler, but I've got a mixed bag here. Because over here, I have this little red toolbox that's full of my general carburetor stuff. Picks, small screwdrivers, wrenches. Well, it was wrenches. Wrenches are up there now. But the things I have in general, just to show you what I have in the box. It's different from a lot of them. I'll start here with this is one of the oldest and infamous ones. Infamous screwdriver on, well, a lot of the larger carburetors. I mean, we were working on carburetors up to 70 horse tractors. You say, that's great. And yeah, that was real. So I had to grind the sides off. I shortened it. Obviously shortened the handle too. This is a Max screwdriver from back in the 80s. I believe it was a 1/2 inch. Now the corners have to be rounded, and this should be rounded more. Anything that you'll be using on jets shouldn't have much for corners. I have this rounded enough to do its job. Goes down in, gets them big brass jobbies. Well, most of the time, you know how that goes. Or sometimes you got to drill them out and just plain suck it up. Let's see. Of course, Phillips. Now these I got from Napa are by Whit. If you like a Whit screwdriver and you don't see it at Napa, you go to your local Matco truck. Matco has the newer versions. This one actually has plastic and the blue is rubber. Excellent screwdrivers for your Phillips. Throw that over here. Now this is a Whit, the common one with a, I guess you call it flocked side rather than the rubber and the regular plastic. It's got the boss on there for your wrenches. And this one is a 1/4 inch, but you see the sides are ground down. This one does most of my jet pulling for the larger jets. You want it parallel and you want it rounded. Down here at the tip, yeah, you want it as square as humanly possible. In fact, probably what you do through time, if you get this thing parallel enough and 1/4 inch all the way, every so often hand file that rascal. You might not be able to make the hand file work by putting this in the vise, but you might be able to put the file in the vise, set this on it, and gently drag the tip lengthwise across it. That way it won't catch. And if the corners are going to grab now and then, well, then take a little bit of the corner off on the file, clean it up. So far, I haven't had any trouble with this thing in years. These are very good screwdrivers. Now, the Napa, I'll show you the other one to give you an idea. Very old, somewhat old. Almost the same screwdriver. Differences. The blade is nearly identical, and you'll see just a little bit of taper on the old job because I haven't done anything with it yet. This one doesn't have the boss on it. Well, what's the difference here? I think I got this one from either Lawson or Carb products, and this came from Napa. And the Matco guy, their screwdrivers are very similar. There's no driver boss here because you put your other screwdriver through the big old hole. That's what that's for. Yes, it probably would be better with a boss, but they can build you a far less expensive blade. Give us permissions. So those two are there. Now here's another one, Napa screwdriver. This one is a 3/16 parallel. You can't find these things anymore. At Napa anyway. But that one has pulled quite a few smaller jets out of a carburetor. This one's been semi-ground, semi-filed, because you get these once in a while where they're a little too thick at the tip. So you have to take them down a little. Let's see what else I have. Well, of course, your common number, little bitty, very small, 5/32 maybe. Now these in Mac are good sized as well for thickness. Snap-ons in the size range are too thick. You have to file them to do anything, and then you take that nice black grippy coating off of there. Number 0 or number 1 actually is what this one is. This is a snap-on. I do that, obviously. For some of you are like, well, why you got a mismatch? Well, so I know what I'm picking up just by a glance. All right, now this came from Briggs & Stratton, a 19061. Looks awful familiar, doesn't it? I had this one for a lot of years before I bought that one. Yeah, it's smaller, but this is a specific jet removal tool from brakes. I've used it a couple times. Why don't I use it any more often? Well, I had trouble. It was a little thick. I had to clean it up. However, I had this one for about 40 years. This is an old 3/16 SK screwdriver. And I ground that and filed it off many, many years ago just for jets. It's obvious I have a lot of certain things, mostly because this was a novelty. I just had to have one. Then these others I've had for many years. And I used to work, well, I had an engine machine shop, I did some road service work, and I worked in my basement. So I had 3 sets of tools for a lot of years. This is a beauty. I don't know if there's a part number on here. No, there isn't. This is a Tecumseh tool for the seats in the Tecumseh carburetor. The hook can pull it out. You put your seat on here and slide it in, or start your seat in the hole. You want to spit on it and push it down in there. Seems to work quite well. I've been happy with it. Used it a few times last year. That is a Tecumseh seat tool for a carburetor. The hook works very well. All we used to do was take the blowgun, put it on the inlet with the float and the needle out, and hit it with air, and there was such a size difference it'd blow the little seat out most of the time. Not all the time. There are a few rare times you have to dig that thing out of there. Now, digging out the bottom isn't so much a problem as you digging the sidewalls of that hole. That's a problem, because then that thing can't seal very well. Oh, what else do I have? Oh, I've got a set of these, the usual, your D's and your splines and squares and all that for your carburetor adjusting tools. This John Deere carb that's on a X465 of these idles. It's not a perfect fit, but it does work because these are round with 2 flat sides. D. So it'll work on there very well. And it has. Let's get this stuff over here. That needs to stay there. These you can get all you want, but they're not impressive. They're cute. They're nice. They kind of work. This is an inexpensive way to make your little jet hole cleaners, but they don't get down very fine. They do somewhat, but it's just not that impressive. These things, all they're going to do is clean the loose stuff out of the hole, and they do that okay. They're different sizes, but they're fluffy, so it doesn't really matter that they're different sizes. They'll go down the hole anyway. Feeler gauges, I forgot what I have those in there for, but this is a set that I threw together. There was something that had to be measured in fine measurements, and this set is from, what have I got it at? I got another one here. These are loose things that I threw together on basically a stove bolt, 10 by 32, 2/1000 up to 16, and there's probably a few skip sizes. I think this is supposed to be in the small engine box, to be honest. So I have a small engine box up there for special tools for that. Why? Well, because this is in the range of almost all small engine adjustments on the aluminum block stuff. You very rarely have anything over 10,000ths. And I do mean very rarely. Your aluminum expands. When it expands, unless you have an aluminum push rod, then as the head and the block expand and take the head up out of the way, the problem you're going to have then is your valves loosen up because they're up top. The push rod barely changes. If it's steel, it doesn't change the length much. But in aluminum, it'll change the length more, and it'll keep you within a consistent range, so you could have a wider gap. But a majority of engines, all the way from Deutz air-cooled down to our little bitty pukes here, Honda, what was that, GC100 or GX100? I forgot what it was on a jumping jack. It was 4,000ths. So when it warms up, and that's on an overhead cam, literally. So they expect the aluminum to do a fair amount, but it's a small engine. The Deutz tractor, if I remember correctly, was 7,000ths. And a lot of your Hondas are 4 to 5 on the intake and 6 to 7 on the exhaust. So 4 to 5, 6 to 7, and a lot of them are 4 to 6 and 6 to 8. So set them all at 6. It works well. And if you forget, set them at 7. Set them at 5. They're really not that fussy once they warm up. All right, so that's what that is for. Of course, T-tap tool. I need to get a different version because this thing's pretty heavy. One thing to remember for those of you who are not mechanically minded, there's 2 things that often come on these. One is a square drive for a ratchet. This thing has a spring-loaded pin, so you can take it out.
Okay, I'm going to get on the stool to put the driftwood back. I'll let you know when I'm finished.
Yes, dear. So.
But if you don't hear from me, like within 45 minutes, you better come in and check.
Oh, my bride's going up on a step stool, one that she tends to miss now and then. Now, inside here is the square. There's also another square further up in here, smaller. Don't forget that, because you'll be fumbling around saying, why in the world can't I? The thing to remember, though, is you have a lot of T-handle here for a little tap like that. So you have to be careful. Don't put a ratchet in it. If you're working in a carburetor, never put a ratchet in one of these things. All right, what do I have here? This is a 1224. I have another one here. I've got a bunch of oddballs, so don't be surprised. I have a 3/8 by 27, they call it pipe tap, or plug tap, actually. 3/8 by 27, an oddball machinist thread. I've run into that once or twice on some. What else do we have here? This is a 10 by something. 10 by 24. Again, a lot of carburetor nuts and bolts and plugs are 24 threads per inch. What's this puppy right here? This has got to be, well, there it is. 3/8 by 32. That's another oddball I've run into occasionally. These are rare. And this one's old Craftsman 3/8 by 16, the chrome edge. The most worthless taps on the planet. They build the tap and then chrome edge it. Yeah. So it takes the sharp edge off of these things, as well as it oversizes the thing like 4 or 5 thousandths. I mean, these are the worst taps that have ever been devised by man, other than your, Harbor Fake Chinese stuff. Why do you have it? I have it here because in an old rusty carburetor, it tends to clean the depth of the threads better. And it was free. What else do we have? Like I say, I got a bunch of oddballs. Some of them aren't even marked. And this one is not. It's another 3/8 tap. But there's no markings on it. So it looks similar to it's probably a 3/8 28. Because it's quite fine thread. And it might be 2 of the 27s for all I know. A die that I've had to use before, this one is a 3/8 by 28 to match one of the others, to go on the outside of your jet if it has that thread. 3/8 24 is far more common. Ooh, I got to oil this. Somehow they got moisture in here. Now this is a set of taps. There's a bottoming tap, a tapered tap, and a standard tap all in here. So what's the difference between them? Come on. And they are all 3/8 24, which is a common fine thread. Okay, this is the plug tap. See the taper in it? You see how far up the tap that before the threads actually get deep enough to do something. It's designed for an actual 3/8 bolt fine thread plug. So you could use this as a taper with a 3/8 bolt. You say, well, that's not that much different. Well, actually it is. It's your standard tap. A lot steeper angle, fewer threads before you get into the deep threads. It's not a tremendous difference, but it's enough of a difference. Sometimes it's easier to start with a plug tap because of the long, gentle taper. Turn it over to this one, and if you have one that's a bottom hole, the bottoming tap. There's almost no lead whatsoever. And that's its only purpose, is to go all the way to the bottom and cut threads to the bottom. Imagine that. Alright, here we go, because I didn't like what I saw there. Problem you have with using WD-40 and some WD-40 is the best, but they still do the same between WD and Blaster. Is anything plastic, it's gonna wreck it. But you'll have your dang tabs. 3H24s are pretty common. What else do we have here? Let me start putting stuff in here. Alright. Oh, here's a very common one for the plugs in the bottom of your carburetor. 1/4 18 NPT, National Pipe Thread. That's a very common one. This one, an 1/8 inch pipe. You need US 1/8 inch. If you see one that says US or 1/8 NPT, you're all good. If you see one that says 1/8 BSP, that's British Standard Pipe. That's a tapered thread, but it's a different thread, and it's a different dimension. The British 1/8 inch pipe tab is smaller in diameter, and I think, if I remember correctly, it's only one thread difference. One is 1/8 28 threads, the other is 1/8 27 threads. But the American version is larger. So something to keep in mind. If you go to put a tap in there and it's very, very loose for the pipe thread, well, you may have the wrong tap. And if you eyeball them, they're identical. And there are times that when the British hole has been worn out and wallered out, now you can put your 1/8 inch American pipe tap in there. Notice almost no difference, and still install, especially for grease fittings, still install your British grease fitting if that's all you have, which it'll be called metric in some cases, but it's British. That's where we got our system from. We changed ours. We do things differently over here. The Brits used to hand you a 3-inch bearing, right? You'd put your 3-inch bearing into a 3.001 hole, or 0001 hole. Here in America, 3-inch bearing is a 3-inch hole, and you put a 2.999 bearing in there, or 995. Yeah, I ran into that a couple of times. Linwood Hand at the LJ Hand Farm Center taught me that years ago. A lot of stuff I learned once I got out of the dealer. And Edgar Handy taught me an awful lot. What else do we have? I do have a smaller handle for the smaller threads. You will notice too that there is no square drive in the back. And this still has the same two-step, what would you call it, collet on the other end. And it's harder for the handle to come out here because you don't want it to. Let's see here. I'll put that in there. That'll probably fit. Yeah, it'll fit. Okay. All right, you got another die. Another die. Oh yeah, here we go. Now we're really getting into it. Snap-on 1/8 by 27 USA. There you go. So ours is 1/8 by 27. 1/8 inch pipe tab. Well, you got a snap-on for it. That's expensive. When it comes to taps, dies, and drill bits, or twist drills, Snap-on is no more expensive than any other excellent quality tool. Mac, Snap-on, Matco, Lawson, Carr. What's the name of the other one? I can't remember now. There were a bunch of them there that were the independent companies, your suppliers. One of them got Bowman. One of them got bought out by the other, and there's only 3 left, I think. There used to be a third and a fourth. As far as Imperial supplies, buy them at your own risk. Everything I bought from Imperial, especially your supply stuff, looms and fuel hoses and such, disaster. You'll buy them nice and inexpensive. It works good. You put it on, drive away, come back 6 months later, and they're cracked and falling apart. So, and on the loom, it's too hard. Crumbles after a while and kinks. But that's your difference here in your pipe tabs. American is 1/8 inch by 27. British is 1/8 inch by 28. And that's nominal. That is not an actual 1/8 inch. What the idea is on pipe thread is that the center hole is a nominal 1/8 inch. And when you get the pipe, it's rarely 1/8 inch. But I think what they're doing is if you have a schedule 80 or stronger, you'll end up with an 1/8 inch hole. But as you come down in schedule, which is the wall thickness of the pipe, it changes drastically. Most everything, if I remember correctly, is schedule 40 is kind of the common, even similar schedules in plastic pipe. So your 21, your 40, and your 80, you can transfer that to some extent over to iron pipe as well. Nobody talks about it.
Okay, I'm done.
That's good, thank you. All right, we'll put that one away. That's just a little humorous for you guys to listen to. Another one that you want is a thread pitch gauge. This one's fractional because that's what I run it to 99% of the time. And you have to put them together properly. This thing swings. This is where you push your finger into to push them out. But if you do it like I did, swing them around the other way, it's harder to get them out, but it's no big deal. It gives you your thread pitch, internal and external. It's hard to check it internal, but you can. This one's quite a broad variety that I got. I think this was something somebody was going to throw out. Okay, it starts at 44 and ends at, this is coarse, baby, 8. So almost half of this is worthless for a carburetor, but it was easy to get a hold of and inexpensive. Free. Somebody's going to throw it out. So that goes in my pile too. What else do I have next here? Oh my, I may have to pull up my light for that one. It's a Mac 10 by 32 NF National Fine Thread 10 by 32. 10 by 24 is your standard SA, not SAE, but your standard thread. That's a very common one for jets as well. Now this one is uncommon. In fact, I'm not even sure I've ever used it. I just put it in there because. Why? Because. Well, some of your little bungs for your throttles and mostly your choke cables, the little screw gets stuck in there and the threads are all messed up. And quite often they're either 1032s, 832s, or 1024s, and it's hard to find an 824. 10's about the smallest. There is a 12, but it's considered 3/16 in size, 24. But 1224 is another one that I've occasionally run into. I just don't have here immediately. Now this is all rusted up and old, and I'm not reading it, but I'm quite certain that this one's your basic 5/16 18. Just a common standard thread, which carburetor mounting is most of it. All right. Now there's some I have to use regulars, but this is the stuff I've run into most common. This set is pretty much for just the jets. If I get into the mounting pads and everything else like that, then I tend to go with just pull it out of my other kit. But when you're working on just a carburetor, 3/8 32 to match some of the others I have, and this is 1/8 inch BSP. There you go, in a tap or a die. I mean, it's hard to find. I think that also is an extra by the way it looks. Now we're getting down to the nitty gritty. I've got some stuff in here that doesn't belong here. Old Tecumseh gaskets, 8 horse, 6 horse in that series. The HH and HM torch tip cleaners. This thing is worthless, but it's helpful just because it's in there. I leave it in there. Now these get very, very fine. Obviously, I usually end up bending them half the time. But if you're not careful in brass, newer brass especially, you can resize a jet hole. It takes a little fumbling around, but you can. Usually end up breaking the thing off, but it is possible if you're not careful. 2 things, not even last but not least. Pin vise. Pin vise? What in the world? actual pin vise, similar to your T-taps handles. That's one end. The other end is a magnet. And what's the magnet for? Well, the magnet isn't actually for picking things up, but there are letter drills in here that you can use to drill the jets out with. And they go down quite small, but not as small as your torch tip. You have to look out for these things because most of them are pretty a short set with very few in it, and larger, like this one. This is the common one I could run into. They're both aluminum. Pin vise. The idea of the pin vise, actually, that as I ran into it years ago, was for diesel engine injectors. We used to actually clean the buggers by hand before we ever replaced them. Back when there weren't so many environmental concerns, we still kept things relatively clean, but at the same time we didn't have so many regulations, and we used to repair a lot of injection nozzles. We were charging $25 an hour, $20 an hour. And as you can see in the backside, a bunch of little drills. So that is my basic operations of stuff. The only other thing I have is what else do I put in there? Well, generally I have a small crescent and a set of these, because these are worthless most other places. This is what, 7-inch maybe? Yeah, we'll go with 7-inch, 6 to 7 inch. A nice size. And if you have a 4 and a 6-inch in a thin crescent like Mac has, adjustable wrenches, they're good too for that. Now, what do I have in the rest of it? Well, like I said before, there's other screwdrivers in here of different sizes, picks for occasionally you run into O-rings, very small for the small carburetors, because I do my chainsaw stuff out of here, toothbrush, knife, box cutter knife, screwdriver head, Allen wrench, files, and nut drivers. It kind of rounds it out. So, if you guys want to get into some of the stuff a little more, do I need to do it separate like this? No. It's just one of those things where I've had things separated for so many years that I thought, why do it any different? Keep everything in one place, and the carburetor comes in, pull the box out. I know where my taps are that are odd sizes and odd shapes. I know where they're extras. And I have most of taps and die sets otherwise. Well, there you go. That's Pops on a Wednesday. Now, what the other problem I'm having here, this is something that's interesting. What was this? Piece of coat hanger. Why do I have a little short piece of coat hanger? Because this carburetor has a pin with a spline in one end to hold it in place. To drive it out, to clean it out, I had to have something like this. This is one of those, I think, is like a stainless coat hanger that I cut off of it. That's why that's there. It has a home now. Didn't have before. The other one, 120 grit paper, emery. That is a necessity. What else do I use? Larger paper like this. Now, I've got it over on my platen sander that I can use there as well, but I have a plate of steel that I ran on the platen sander and checked its surface. Now, of course, it's compared to some of you guys, you're going to say it's crude, but that's how you check yours as well, even with your $200,000 machines. And I took the platen sander and a nice thick plate of steel, I think it was 3/4, and laid it on the platen sander and ran it back and forth on an older belt and checked it with a straight edge and feeler gauge to be sure and take all the bow out of it, everything that causes trouble, warp and whatnot. When I got it down so it was flat, I can use this on there, wrap it over this because the thing's 4 inches wide, wrap this around it, lay it down, and now my carburetor body, most of them, not all, is in that 4-inch range, so I can run it back and forth and see if it's flat. I've had a couple that we're not flat anymore. You may not, some people may not realize it because they don't talk about it so much anymore. With aluminum, it doesn't seem to be as big a problem, but it's still, there are internal stresses on all these castings. And cast iron, for some reason, as they age and general heating and cooling cycles, or however, then the carbon that's in them changes, and they tend to change shape just ever so slightly. But if you get an air leak from it, and your gasket loses crush in a particular area, it may not lose it all the way around where your screws are. In fact, screws actually tend to pull their locations, their ears down. So you lay that on a plate and take that surface back flat again. And some of you are going to say, well, it's worth every second of it. These things are $400, $500, $600 carburetors, unless you buy some cheap Chinese crap. So you rebuild the old. You're better off. Unless there's something serious, like there has been a couple. One of them I had when I was at Empire Tractor had so much rust and crap in the bottom, I literally had to take it apart a second time and literally drill out some holes that I couldn't even see. I just had to know they were there. Chipped them out, figured out where they were, found a soft spot, drilled a hole so the main jet could get gas. Yeah, there's other holes that were in there, I thought, but that was a drain hole. So unless you really get into these things and dig them out, in the same style carburetor with similar numbers in the bottom, because of different main jets, it might be a fixed main jet, it might be a different type of screw, adjusting screw on the bottom. The adjusting screw may have its own seat in it. One of them may have the adjusting screw in the tube, the seat in the tube, and then the screw and the bung nut go in the bottom, and then it seats in and out of here. There's 3 or 4 different configurations they put down there. So they drill the carburetor and sometimes cast it different too. Well, what's your job? I even had cleaner in here for rust on cast iron and steel. You know what it did? Goose egg. I've gotten more out of Purple Power. And what's the other stuff my cousin got me go on to? They're like totally awesome, dude. I forgot where I was. I think I got it off of Amazon. And he says, yeah, go on up there and take a look. Stuff's called it's totally awesome stuff. And I said, well, what's the name? He said, Totally Awesome. And it is. Totally Awesome is the name of a cleaner. And it's in my Sonic cleaner and worked very well on this aluminum carburetor last time. Can I tell you? That'll be my next experiment. The other one is heat. Anything you can do to warm the chemicals up, even in warm weather, warm it up a little more, get them near 100 degrees, they tend to be have a lot more efficacy, let's put it that way. A little bit more active, a little bit more reactive. Oh yeah, stick your hand in there. Totally Awesome will take care of your top 2 or 3 layers of skin, let me tell you. The old Purple Power used to as well, not the new stuff. The new stuff is worthless compared to the formulas I used to use back 25 years ago. So, don't know what to tell you, but our government sticks their nose into everything for your safety. I know what I'm doing, feds. Get out. Now, you heard before that I'm working with Blaster. Now, here's another one that I was disappointed. I was picking this stuff up, B12 Chem carburetor choke spray. Disappointed. It's not bad, but it's not nearly as good as some of the other stuff I've used before. However, on that vein, it was quite a few, now I guess it was quite a few years ago, I used to be able to buy MAP gas that worked really well. I mean, great heat. I mean, we're talking MAP gas air torches weren't that far off of an acetylene for heat. You could braze with it. Now, it's not even close to the same. They have something else, ethane, methane, something else they throw in the mix rather than acetylene to mix with a propane. And of course it's for your safety. Please. Whatever they did, they ruined them. So I've got a plumber's torch, propane, Gauss torch on propane. And I can actually turn some steel just a dull red so that I can bend it with air propane. Our government's screwing with us again. So, as you can tell, I like to be anti-American, conservatarian type. I'm going to put my stuff back together in my box because I'm done. I've reevaluated this carburetor after we had trouble, and we're coming up with either I did clean something up that I couldn't see before, or most likely it is. Now it has a pulse, the same thing that almost every engine manufacturer uses, a little crankcase pulse fuel pump, but it's not pumping near enough to keep the carburetor fed. In fact, it's not pumping near enough to get in the carburetor to keep it fed, because there's a particular size orifice in there. And if that pump doesn't develop the same flow, but also pressure to get it through that little bitty hole, your engine's screwed. Now you say, what would cause it not to? Well, you've got air leaks, so that the pulse doesn't happen. Air leaks, so you draw in air with your fuel on the inlet end of the thing. You got restrictions coming out of there, which it doesn't have, but at the same time could have, because the interior wall of the fuel pipe can constrict, or the fuel hose. And I've had it a couple times, even in hydraulics. The interior of the hose comes down, close off a passage. Oil flow one way, but not the other. Of course, I've had that happen with debris, too. Contamination, O-ring. So, in this case, the other one that can happen as well is your valve guides are shot, you have blow-by from your exhaust, your pistons or rings, most likely, and your cylinder walls gone. And if there's enough blow-by from them, you don't get the pulse. On this V2, you don't get the pulse from your pistons doing their thing. So even on a V2, which is one of the handiest things, the V2 can give you a nice pulse. One piston up, you get a nice long vacuum and a nice long pressure. And you say, well, they don't fire. No, they don't have to fire together. The pistons on the bottom of the crankcase below the rings just have to go up and down. So you have pressure and vacuum on that little diaphragm fluttering along. And it's a fairly long stroke. Well, in this case, I think they've got a serious problem in that engine. And they still want to try to fix it. So I've got an electric fuel pump coming that's like a 1 pound or something. They used to make one from Napa that was 0 to 3. Well, now you get 1 to 3 or 1.5 to 3. And that's probably more than enough. So we'll see how that works on this engine. You're saying the engine's wasted. Why are you? Because he wants to. We fix this thing, I turkey hunt. That's kind of how that works. And in the wintertime, if nobody's around, I get to deer hunt. So sometimes you just pay the money. Anyway, that's it for the day for you folks. There's probably only one other thing I should consider showing you. 2. This one. It's an O-light pen. This is an O-pen light, I think. What is it? Oh no, i3T Plus. Well, they have a new i3T, the single battery instead of this double. I can't find this double anymore. Main thing I like about the double is it's big enough I can find it. The other little bugger is probably 2/3 the length of this. Half maybe even. It's tiny. For me anyway. And I lose it. Forget about it. This thing I forget about all too often. But you need a light to look down in your holes and do your... No. You need this and that. And I do have, you see over here, that's my light up there, LED. Right nearby, a couple of feet away. And the other one is rare, but once in a while you need a caliper for some of your measurements. I don't have it in here. Oh, no, I kind of have a facsimile of. Use a tape measure so you can measure your float. But the best one I don't have right here. There's a stainless steel 6-inch rule that has a pocket clip. The pocket clip acts like a T-bar. So if you actually want to check a particular measurement, set the T-bar where you want the measurement checked. Then they work better than either one of these. I just don't happen to have one now. 40 years ago they were popular. You could find them everywhere. Grocery stores, Harbor Fake stores, you'd find them online, Sears, J.C. Penney for crying out loud, Montgomery Ward's, all the names you'll never see again. Napa stores, they'd be all over. Everybody, you'd see them in the pockets of almost every mechanic ever. They were just too common. Today, if it ain't a caliper, nobody knows what to do with it, especially one of these that spoon feeds you the numbers. And the last one is this, a magnifier. I'm young, I got good eyes. Nah. Yeah, you're young. You do have good eyes. 2 things. A, if you keep using them, you won't. You'll overstress them. And number 2, they're not that good. So, and this sucker's old. Probably 20 something years. and it's scratched up and it's still usable. I think this is 3 or 5 times and this is 10. Yeah, you're looking at numbers. Also, you're looking for porosities and other things with something like this. Originally, it was lighted. That didn't last because there ain't no bulb in there. But this is something else to have around too when you're looking for numbers and such. It takes a while to get used to how far away to put the thing. Sometimes closer to your eye, but usually you're focusing according to what you're looking at, closer to the numbers or the subject matter you're trying to get a hold of. Then you adjust your eyes accordingly. But play around with it, you'll figure it out. Ooh, that needs to go back. That piece of junk's the handiest thing in quite a while. You'll almost never use these, but when you do, you're glad you have them. Why do I put it in a box instead of leaving it in my toolbox? 2 reasons. One of them is the toolbox is a roller. Small roller, and the more I have in it, the more I have to fill. The other one is I'll lose track of these screwdrivers because occasionally, you know what I mean, you leave it laying someplace. I don't want to leave it laying someplace. I want it right here where I can work on it in one shot. Some other stuff I've had in there before that I haven't used. You know, you can have a small set of nippers, even a micro and electronic snippers and pliers. They come in handy. And needle nose. Do you use them? No, not very often at all. So that's something I tend to leave in my regular tool set. And on certain occasions for making gaskets, this is an 8 ounce. And I used to have one years ago, and I either threw it out or lost track of it, a 4 ounce. The guys are going to tell you start tapping on it to get it. No, you tap on aluminum stuff like this to make a gasket gently. You're marking the gasket. Then you take an old-fashioned hole punch, like a paper hole punch, and punch the holes out in your gasket. Then you punch corners and holes that you're going to cut out, and you pull out a set of heavy-duty mechanic scissors and cut that thing out. Or, like this one, I believe these are Fiskars. They are. This is a set of Fiskars I cut my gaskets out with. They will cut heavy gaskets fairly well. But heavy gaskets there again have 2 problems. One of them is if you turn too sharp, they tend to crack and split. And the other one is if you take those scissors and they're short jawed, which makes it easier to turn but causes a problem when you bring that short jaw down and you snip it to the end while you're still in the paper. In the cut, it'll crack. So you can only close it most of the way down. You can cut your gaskets out and be in very good shape. Alright, I think I've killed things enough. Another one I found is my tomato cages. When they break and they're worthless, I cut the wires out between the welds, and then I'm able to form hangers for the 2x4s on my wall here. There's seams in the tin, or there's actually corrugations and there are bends in them, channels. And I can drop this thing in the channel over top of the 2x4 and then have a hook over here that I put over there. I've got grease guns on the wall with it. It's a lot of work fumbling around. There's other ways that would be better. However, this is available. And what it requires is just me to spend the time hurting my hands, pinching it, cutting it, and bending. However, I have stuff hanging all over those 2x4s just before I insulate the place, which is not going to be for a while. Excuse me, when I get the chance to insulate the place, it'll most likely be with 4x8 bats. And I can lay it over the top of the 2x4s, or you slice it up because the 2x4 itself is insulation. Cut the thing and lay it in between the 2x4s, and my little hooks stay right there. They're not going to interfere. So it's less crap to change. I'm getting old where, sometimes you just let things go because fumbling around with it, I'm probably not going to be running around the shop 4 years from now. I hope to be, but I doubt I will be. So. But then again, I keep thinking, that is over 30 years away. That's a lot of time. And you say, 99? My hope and my prayer is the Lord allows me to live and at least into a functioning sort and be able to take care of myself for the most part up till I'm 99. So I have the chance of seeing my grandkids and maybe great-grandkids. Some of you out there that have problematic marriages from the past understand what I'm saying there. Because for certain mates that you thought you married was a wonderful person, then you get married and suddenly it's a different person. And more keeps coming out that neither you nor anybody else in your family or friends saw. And believe it or not, those type of people are skilled at it. You're not. You're trying to be honest. And they use your honesty against you. If you're a good mate, the severe narcissist uses you. And if you are a good mate, you're not thinking the thoughts of somebody that's cheating, beating, sleazing. You shouldn't. And they see that. So you're going to get stuck with something once in a while. The funny thing is, I think it was Hosea in the Old Testament that ended up with a bad mate. And the conjecture was that he thought she was a beautiful woman, was a local hooker of sorts. I think she was one of the local temple priestess from one of the other religions. And the Lord said, go marry her. But she's not. No, go marry her, because that's what Israel has done to me. You can go have what you want. And Israel, and you're going to write about it. And he did. I think her name was Gomer. And he wrote about her and what he had to go through for her. I think he bought her back 3 times before they gave up. And I can say safely that first time around I did the same thing too. So that's why I talk about my grandkids a lot. And I miss them. I love them. And maybe once in a while they'll run into one of these or somebody, because the Lord does weird things. Somebody will connect from here and talk to my kids, Colin, Autumn, and Zelda, and let them know that Grandpa's still here and still loving them. And he's not the crazy you've been told. Time for me to get back at it. You see, what are you doing wasting time in the middle of the day on A, I wanted to do this anyway, and B, Debbie and I have been sick for the last 2 days. So I'm taking it easy, just cleaning some things up, putting stuff away, moving the welding bench in, maybe cutting some metal for a project on the Case 511 to put a grill guard in the front, and similar things like that. Why the grill guard? I'm driving through the woods. Once in a while it gets a little sketchy. I'd like to be able to put just a big old wall of protection around the front end of that case so the air can still come in. But tree branches don't. All right, you folks have a good day.